Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at Psalm 33, where we read of praise for our great God. We begin verse 1. By the way, notice there's no superscription. The Septuagint has one. Septuagint says to Dawood, or we would say to David, or for David. We usually think that as a superscription of authorship, and maybe there's an old tradition, but it didn't make it into the Hebrew text. So we begin now. Sing for joy in the Lord, O you righteous ones. And then this is parallelism, synonymous parallelism. So he starts off, sing for joy. I think the King James says shout for joy. Either one works. The King James might be a little bit more accurate there. Then praise is becoming to the upright. So notice the righteous, O you righteous, O you upright. Verse 2, give thanks to the Lord. By the way, notice with the lyre, we're going to see some musical instruments here. And then give praise to him with a harp of 10 strings. These are some of the instruments that you would see back in David's day. You're looking at a wall sculpture that was, I think, if I remember correctly, among the Hittites, but of this period, of David's period. And then verse 3, you notice you had at the end of verse 2, you had sing praise to him. And then verse 3, sing to him. These are all different words. They're synonyms, but they're different words. So I've got the English word sing repeated 3 times. It's 3 different Hebrew words. Maybe related, but 3 different words. And then verse 3, sing to him a new song. That doesn't mean we can't sing the old songs too, but there's a call here, and we see this call repeated a number of times in the Psalms, to where we're called to sing to the Lord a new song, and then play skillfully with a shout of joy. Verse 4, for the word of the Lord is upright, and all his work is done in faithfulness. So notice you have the word of the Lord and then his work, upright faithfulness, but then he loves righteousness and justice. The earth is full of the loving kindness, all these qualities of God, of the Lord. Now, verses 1 through 3 were a call to praise the Lord, but here as we come to verses 4 and 5, we see the reasons for praising the Lord because of his word, because his work, because the whole earth is full of his loving kindness, his chesed, remember that term? So the focus here is, in the reasons, it's upon the earth, but it's not going to stay there. We're going to go to the verse 6, by the word of the Lord, the heavens were made. And so, we had to focus on the earth, but now the heavens, that is the sky, and you look up into the sky and you can see God's handiwork. By the breath of his mouth, all their hosts. Verse 7, he gathers, and you go from the heavens now to the waters. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays up the deeps. That's another term for the sea. He lays up the deeps in the storehouses. So we had the sky in verse 6. We had the sea in verse 7. Next, we go to verse 8. We had the sea in verse 7. Now we're going to verse 8. Let all the earth, and so now it's going to come back to the land where we started. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. Verse 9, and notice we're called to fear the Lord, to stand in awe. That's saying the same thing. That's synonymous parallelism. Verse 9, for he spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. These are descriptive terms to describe God's creative work. And really, it takes us all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. The heavens, the earth, all those things where God said and it happened, all those works of the mighty works of the Lord. Now, that's what God did in the past. We continue now to what God does or is doing in the present. So the Lord nullifies the counsel of the nations. He frustrates the plans of the peoples. Notice the nations and the peoples, that's the same thing. The counsel and the plans, that's the same thing. This is synonymous parallelism where you say it and then you say it with just different words, but you're saying essentially the same thing. Verse 11, the counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart from generation to generation. Notice forever and generation to generation. That's the same thing as well. Verse 12, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. The people, the nation and the people are speaking of the same thing, whom he has chosen for his own inheritance. Notice he's chosen the people. Verse 13, the Lord looks from heaven, and here we're going to see God seeing and knowing all things, so that he looks from heaven. He sees all the sons of men. From his dwelling place, he looks out on all the inhabitants of the earth. Verse 15, he who fashions the heart of them all, he who understands all their works, that God, he sees everything and he understands it because he was the one who brought it all together. Now we're going to see three things that do not save. Notice the king is not saved by a mighty army. A warrior is not delivered by great strength. Verse 17, you're going to see what a horse doesn't do, but it's stated a little bit differently. A horse is a false hope for victory, nor does it deliver anyone by its great strength. Notice the great strength of the warrior, the great strength of the horse. It doesn't matter. Those things don't save. Verse 18, behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope for his loving kindness. So you've got the ones that fear him, the ones who hope for his loving kindness. That's really saying the same thing. And the eye of the Lord is toward both of those. Verse 19, to deliver their soul from death and to keep them alive in famine. And then verse 20, our soul waits for the Lord. He, the Lord, is our help and our shield. So notice the Lord is worthy of our confidence, which really sums up everything that we've been saying. We said everything throughout this psalm to get to these last few verses. And now we come to the last two verses. For our heart rejoices in him, and that is the Lord, because we trust in his holy name. So we have an expression of faith, how we are trusting in the Lord. But now, instead of talking about trusting in the Lord, the final verse is addressed to the Lord. Let your loving kindness, O Lord, be upon us, according as we have hoped in you. And so it ends with our, not just our attention, but our words directed to the Lord. And this is a delightful salvation verse. God has poured out his loving kindness in the cross, and when he sent his son to die in our place. And yet, notice he says, "Let that hesed that you have, that you showed, let it be upon us. Let it be applied to us, even as we have hoped, even as we have trusted in you."